I'm Araminta Robertson, and this is SEO in 2024 Additional Insights.
Araminta, what's your additional insight for SEO in 2024?
My additional insight for 2024 is target low volume, high ROI keywords. These are keywords that typically have under 50 searches a month, but the people who are typing them up and researching them are clearly indicating that they're ready to buy. So they're high intent keywords. Those keywords often have lower competition, so they're quite easy to rank for, and they can bring in a decent amount of leads, sales, customers compared to other types of keywords.
So should keywords that have less than 50 searches per month actually be the initial focus? Or if a business is perhaps just getting established in terms of SEO, should they still be thinking of their core pillar keyword phrases that can potentially bring in a lot more traffic? Or are you suggesting to actually get started with these sorts of keywords?
The answer is it depends, right, on the goal of the company. If you're an established company, maybe you've already invested quite a bit into content, so you've got a pretty strong website, but you're looking to get more results out of your content, more leads, more sales, more business results, then yeah, go ahead, invest in low volume, high ROI keywords. If the website is relatively new, low domain authority, I wouldn't maybe start with those because it's going to take a while, right, to rank for anything. Maybe you could do a couple because why not? And then you'll get them ranking eventually. But I'd definitely do a wider range of keywords if you're just starting out and the website's relatively new.
And what's your perspective on targeting zero volume keywords or allegedly zero volume keywords?
Yes, I love them as well. I mean, it's similar to low volume, high ROI keywords. The only thing is it can be hard to know because they're zero. It's harder to prioritize because a lot of keywords have zero volume. So it makes it a bit harder to prioritize which ones to go after. I typically would go after a zero volume keyword if it comes up in quite a few places, if it comes up in Google Suggest, for example, or as a related keyword, or comes up in a few tools. And if I know that people are searching this up, maybe because I've heard it in sales calls or it's come up quite a few times, then I would definitely go after it. But if it's a zero volume keyword where I'm like, I'm not really sure, I might pause on it and decide on that later.
And if it's a client you're having a conversation with that perhaps has a bit of SEO knowledge and they say to you, these keywords don't have any volume at all, why are you targeting them? How do you push back on that?
Yeah, that happens a lot. And we say, well, look, is your objective to get more traffic or to get more business? Typically, they hire us to get more business. And so we say, look, yeah, we can focus on traffic and get you 500 more sessions a month, or we can get you more business. Which one's more important to you? And if the answer is business, then we'll say it's a no-brainer. Let's go after the low volume, high ROI. If the goal is traffic, then we would say, okay, fine, let's go after the traffic one. But that hasn't happened yet.
So you mentioned Google Suggest there. Is that the primary online resource that you use to identify these opportunities?
No, I wouldn't say so. We'd use the same SEO tools as everyone else, Ahrefs and SEMrush and Majestic. Typically, we start off by going through conversations with the sales team to try and understand and find keyword ideas. Sales team, also with the product team, general research. So really basing it on customer research. And then we go through transcripts of those conversations. And that's how we kind of put together a list of ideas. And then from there, put them through an SEO tool, see what comes up in terms of search volume. And if it's very low, even zero, we might still go after it. But what's really important is to start it off with kind of what we're hearing from customers or from the people who talk to customers.
I like your approach in taking the transcript. So that's a transcript between a salesperson and a prospective customer, is it?
It could be that. Or what we do is we interview the salespeople, asking them questions about their target market. So it's questions like, who are your best customers? What are the customers that bring in the most amount of revenue? What are their pain points? What indicates that their pain point, that the product really solves for this pain point? So there's a lot of these questions that we can ask to get a good understanding of what does an ideal customer look like and what would they be searching for online and what would they be using Google for? And we record those conversations, and transcript is useful because then you can go over it word by word and look for any keywords in there.
And I'm imagining that there might be an opportunity to take the transcript and use AI to analyze the transcripts and then perhaps generate keywords or potential keyword opportunities automatically from that. Is that a process that you have used or you would recommend?
We haven't used it. It's definitely something, I think, one way that someone could try doing that. But I do feel this part of the process is where content marketing SEO is more of an art than a science, because this is where you really you need to put yourself in the shoes of a customer or a prospect. What are they typing on Google? What are they searching for? What are their problems? What keeps them up at night? Can an AI really parse that through a recording? I don't know, maybe. But this is where a human can do a good job, or try to do a good job, which is by thinking deeply and kind of being empathetic, putting yourself in the shoes of the customer. So far, we still do it ourselves. AI can maybe help with ideas, but I wouldn't do it fully with AI, definitely not at the moment.
And with your conversations with salespeople and other people in the business, do you try to get their perspectives on keywords that perhaps aren't actively being used in conversations at the moment, that aren't actively being used on web pages by the business, to identify opportunities that haven't been utilized?
Yes, definitely. I mean, we sometimes just straight up ask the salesperson, what are some words that you've heard people describe your product that aren't necessarily correct? That's really an interesting one, right? Because yeah, sure, maybe your target market uses the word software and actually you're more of a web app, but the customer doesn't know that, right? Or the prospect doesn't know that. So it's still worth going after the keyword software, even though maybe you're not software. I don't know, that's not a good example, but you see what I mean? Like, even if you're not the actual product, or they use a different word to describe it, we're still very interested in those keywords because someone typing that up could be a good customer.
As a golden question there for the listener, what is a word or phrase that you've heard the customer use about your product that isn't necessarily correct, but it could be the way they describe it, and it might have higher search volume than the keywords you're currently targeting?
Yeah, definitely.
So how do you know if keywords are likely then to have a high ROI?
Well, I mean, you never know 100%, right? The way that we think about it is that each keyword that we go after is kind of a hypothesis, especially at the beginning, where we've got maybe 4 or 5 different low volume, high ROI keywords that we think could bring in a good amount of leads or sales. And we'll start by targeting each one. And then once you've done that for a few months, you start to see results. And maybe it turns out that people using the keyword software brings in really good results. That's really interesting. And then from there, we'll probably start looking and targeting more keywords that are kind of software related. So platform, tool, whatever. So when you're just starting out, it's kind of hypothesis testing. And then as you get more data and more information, you can use that to do more targeted, and you can also know better what's going to work and what isn't.
And perhaps even change your brand strapline as well, because for instance, if you do offer SEO software, or is it a platform, or is it a tool, I guess the answer is it's how your customers describe it.
Yeah. Well, you need to know what your customers, the words they're using. You can't be too protective of your messaging, because ultimately, if a different word helps a customer or a prospect understand your product better, why not use it, right? We get this a lot in the payments industry where, for example, they don't want to use the word embedded finance because that's not what they do. But we say to them, I understand, but that's the word that your customers are using. So it's still worth targeting that keyword. And then in the article explaining, okay, yeah, we don't exactly do embedded finance. We do this, but we can still help solve your problems because we know someone typing in embedded finance is also looking for what our client does. So there's a kind of educational element here. And this is why we're content marketers and why we like to target those keywords with content, because then you can really explain the reader and take them through a journey of what it is that your product does.
So talking about an educational element, perhaps there's an internal educational element here. Is it within an SEO's remit to take their findings from an exercise like this and go to the brand team and try and encourage them to change the way that they go about doing things as well?
If sales are doing really well and the business is doing really well, maybe not. But if maybe they are struggling, business is struggling, maybe it's mostly the salespeople who are saying, I don't know, the messaging, the positioning isn't resonating, it's not working, then it does make sense for an SEO to go to probably the sales team and the brand team and say, look, these are the words that people are using. Maybe it makes sense to change that. But I think this is more of a positioning and a messaging exercise. So it's multiple different teams that have to work together on this to really decide on what keywords and what phrases to use when communicating the product.
So you've talked a little bit about the conversations that you may have with salespeople. What about customer research directly? What would be your ideal way of doing this? Is it sufficient, for instance, to have some kind of online survey that customers fill in? Or are you looking to have some kind of focus group and talk to customers directly?
Yeah, we don't do a lot of this because we work with like B2B high ticket companies. So typically salespeople are really good for this. But if you can talk to customers directly, definitely. I think just, emailing customers, prospects, and setting up a call is a good place to start. I'm a big fan of just going to conferences and doing kind of interviews, but without them, without saying that it's an interview. You know what I mean? So you just go to conferences and you chat to people and you just ask the questions that you're trying to get answers to. Because that way it can be a bit awkward, setting up an interview with your prospects because it doesn't always make sense for them. So a mix of setting up interviews with people who agree to doing it, talking to people at conferences, and also, surveys. I mean, if you can do that, why not? Any like Reddit, Quora, all the typical stuff is also a really good place of getting information. But yeah, having that perspective of, I think you're always doing research. You're always interested in how they're talking about things. That's a good mindset to have because then you pick things up like that.
And how often should you revisit the keywords that you're targeting? Because I would imagine that with low volume keywords, popularity of certain terms can change quite significantly as months go by. So how often do you review that?
I would say maybe 2 or 3 times a year. It depends on how deep you're going when you're doing that keyword research. When we do it, it takes a long time. It's quite deep. We're spending multiple hours interviewing the salespeople and then 1 or 2 hours going through the recordings and then 1 or 2 hours then going through the SEO tool. So that's quite in depth. So if you're going to do it that way, maybe twice a year is enough. If you're more surface level, maybe just doing it 2 or 3 times. Did I say a month? Sorry, a year. Just doing it 2 or 3 times a year might be enough. So it kind of depends a bit on how often you're trying to publish content, how your capacity, and if you run out of keywords, obviously that's a good indicator that it's time to do some more research.
And how about your process or a few tips on where to position keywords within content? Because you talk about targeting them within in-depth content. So what do you mean by that? And is it appropriate just to target the one keyword phrase per page?
Yeah, that's how we do it. So imagine you're targeting the keyword accounting software for freelancers. We would target that with an article. And that article is an in-depth overview, whatever we think that the person is looking for. So it could be a list post, it could be a product, focus on the product, could be focused on use cases, whatever it is. And then we go after just that one keyword. We don't go after multiple. Our sole focus is to rank for that one. Eventually, we'll rank for other keywords as well, and that's great. But the focus is that one keyword to try and keep it simple and streamlined. And we use a tool like ClearScope to make sure that we're getting the right keywords in place. But the focus is always, let's make a great piece of content that will educate the person and hopefully help them take action. And the ClearScope kind of SEO stuff is just kind of like to make sure to help us rank highly for that keyword.
So you've shared what SEO should be doing in 2024. Now let's talk about what SEO shouldn't be doing. So what's something that's seductive in terms of time, but ultimately counterproductive? What's something that SEO shouldn't be doing in 2024?
Well, just on what we discussed, I think that it can take up a lot of time trying to get one article or one piece of content ranking for a lot of keywords. Because then you're having to add a lot of keywords in the article itself, which ends up stuffing it, You end up making it really long or adding sections that are unnecessary. If your focus is generating leads, sales, customers, and you want to go after just one keyword that will bring in those customers, I would just go after that one keyword instead of trying to optimize it for many others. And then if there's another keyword that you think would be interesting to go after, just create a separate piece of content. Don't try and use one to go after a lot, because it just takes a lot of time and I'm not sure if the ROI is there.
Araminta Robertson is Managing Director at Mint Studios, and you can find her over at mintcopywritingstudios.com. Araminta, thanks so much for adding your additional insight to SEO in 2024.
Thank you, David.
I've been your host, David Bain. You've been listening to an episode of SEO in 2024 Additional Insights, a Majestic series that complements the original SEO in 2024 podcast, video series, and book. Find out more at SEOin2024.com.